dimensions away from Rise of the Planet of the Apes being called Rise of the Apes. I'm your host 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Rise of the Planet of the Apes, released in 2011. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is directed by Rupert Wyatt and is written by Rick Joffrey and Amanda Silver, husband and wife duo writing team. And the movie stars James Franco, Andy Serkis, Frida Patel, Tom Felton, and Brian Cox. The movie is essentially about James Franco plays a scientist in the lab, and it's supposed to be set within like a prequel to the Charlton Heston film, but really it's more or less a reboot of the series thing, like Batman Begins. And so basically, James Franco plays a scientist who basically is trying to cure his father's Alzheimer's, played by John Lithgow, and basically he's trying to cure the Alzheimer's and everything. And so basically, what happens is, you know, they're testing on chimpanzees, and they went and they round up chimpanzees, and then of course one of them gets really smart, and then they basically, you know, and then of course this one dies, and then it has an offspring. So basically, like in this one, Caesar starts getting more smarter and more smarter until something happens to where he starts becoming independent once he's committed, and then this ape becomes basically a leader to other apes and basically causes a revolt. The movie is like, you know, the movie is essentially the rise of the Planet of the Apes. You know, it basically shows you how the apes rose up and how the virus spreads. And I really enjoyed this movie. When I first heard about it, I was kind of worried because I'm like, oh, there's never been a good Planet of the Apes movie, in my opinion. I thought Tim Burton was okay when I first saw it. I do appreciate it much more now, and I didn't care for the Heston film when I first saw it. Never liked any of the sequels. And so I was like, I really, really, really want this to be good. So when I saw the first trailer, it looked so creepy. And I'm like, yes, you know, and as I was watching it, I'm like, this trailer was so good, so I could not wait. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I waited until I got it for Christmas, and I watched it Christmas Day, and I just loved every single moment of this movie. I was like, just so hooked. James Franco, who, regardless of how you feel about him as a person, is a great in this movie. He's so good as, you know, Will, that, you know, basically you believe that he really wants to save his father, and then his Caesar becomes like this surrogate father-son relationship to Caesar, unlike, you know, where he's being a father to his father, and he's also taking care of his chimpanzee, or his ape, you know, and so, you know, and he's basically trying to, you know, like be Caesar, and Caesar's becoming smarter until something bad happens with Caesar, because Caesar, of course, gets into like an altercation defending, you know, John Lithgow's character, because John Lithgow, he tries the AV1 on John Lithgow, and he becomes like, you know, smart and gets rid of his Alzheimer's, but then it starts coming back because it's not a permanent solution; it's like a temporary solution. And so basically, and it's really idea about how far would you willing to go to save your father, and basically this like thing becomes a virus essentially, because this they start testing on other ones in the lab, and then of course it spreads like a virus, and then one guy gets infected and starts spreading other people, and realizing this thing becomes an epidemic. And as the ape, Caesar rises up because basically Caesar feels abandoned by Will, and he doesn't, you know, and so by the time, you know, Will goes to get him back, Caesar's already like, I don't need you anymore, and basically, you know, Will is like, you know, basically trying to figure out like, he can't get Caesar back and everything. And he kind of, I like the parallels it sees to the Apes movies. Like for instance, there's a scene in the movie where Tom Felton is like, it's a madhouse, you know, and everything, and like, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, like the water thing, and then on top of that, you see the movie with Charlton Heston is playing on the TV, and then on top of that, you know, like you see like, you know, people rounding up the apes at the beginning, more it's like in the original Apes movie, how the humans are rounded up, you know, how the humans are rounded up by the apes, so it parallels, and I thought that was a really cool parallel. And I also like that, you know, the relationship between James Franco, although I feel like the only thing I had issues with really in this movie is that it does a lot of time jumps to try to like get all this story and info, and like, okay, that like we see Caesar climb up there. There's a time jump to like, okay, he's been Caesar. You know, he's been with them for a while now. They're a couple and all this stuff, and it basically, I just wish we could have sat there and we could have built that up more, so that way when his father, you know, does have Alzheimer's, you actually felt bad, and so it's like, oh, okay, you know, and so that's when it really really sets in. But I understand you got to get the plot in motion because, you know, the movie's not long. Like it's like an hour, like in 20 minutes or something like that. Like it's not a very long movie. Like you can get through this movie within like a couple less than like 2 hours. I think you can get through this whole movie. I do really like that. The movie has great visuals. Like this was defining because this is the first ape movie they didn't use like, you know, John Chambers design, or they didn't use Rick Baker or apes and prosthetics in general. They just went with Weta, which did the Gollum effects and the King Kong effects from the Peter Jackson movies. And so this time around, this is even though Andy Serkis was Gollum and King Kong in those movies, he is Caesar this time, and this is 100% non-Peter Jackson involvement. And this time around, Andy Serkis kind of leads the charge in this, and he does such a good job in this movie. Like Andy Serkis is so brilliant in this movie as Caesar, and you just believe that it is you don't believe this is a man in a motion capture suit. Like you believe, like, oh my god, this is a real ape, and you believe all this stuff, and like essentially like when he's hunting down like the guy, whenever John Lithgow gets into an altercation in the movie and he hunts down this guy, and you just feel like the drums are playing all the time, like, oh my god, this is so cool. And and then of course whenever he basically sneaks out of the animal shelter and then gets like was it LZ12, like he gets that, and then gets all the other apes smart and everything, and how they basically kill Tom Felton, and I'm like, wow, it was so great. Where he's like, take your damn dirty hands off, you damn dirty ape, and he's like, no. And then and then all of a sudden he tries to kill him, and he shoots him and he electrocutes and dies, and I'm just like, and then the other guy was kind to him, so he lets him go in the cage. But everything else, they just escape, and it's so great, especially when Brian Cox and the police are there the next morning, and they he's like, your monkey smoke, and then Brian Cox sees the police. I love when he sees like on video, and he's like just shocked that his son is dead, but also like the apes are speaking, and and on top of that, I like how basically, it's sad to see the dad die and like his best friend die, Will's best friend die. But I do also like that the villain of the movie is basically like this billionaire, and Mr. Jacobs, which I think is a nod to Arthur Jacobs, the producer on the original 8 films. And so basically, this guy, he's a villain, kind of the main human villain of the story, where he basically is greedy corporation man who's like, I want progression, I want results, and everything. And so basically he has to they tested on the ape Bright Eyes, and then Bright Eyes gets killed, and so it turns out she was protecting her child, which is Caesar. And I like how it all fathoms out and everything, and he's like wants them to put all the apes down, but then they see progress, so then they're putting it back on with more apes, and it just shows you how littlest lives the humans cared about the apes, where they're just wanting to kill them all, and then we'll bring a new batch in, and it just shows you how meaningless this is, and it kind of sucks, which, I mean, also, there are some plot holes in this movie, like, for instance, James Franco said they took this LZ-112, and then later on you see him stick some in his pocket, and then he gives it to his dad, it's not even a time jump. That's literally like within the next day. So I mean, whether they just bring it back and say, hey, you know what, we'll let you keep it here, or I mean, that to me, I was like, oh, come on, really, But at the same time, I do like, and also when the apes start attacking, like they go to the zoo, even though you could say like that's a dumb plot hole, like, okay, they don't have the LZ-112, so basically, how does that work? They're just mindless apes. The other ones aren't. Just stuff like that. You're just like, okay, that doesn't make much sense. Like, but if you got to turn your brain off for that. But at the same time, I do like how they go into like you see like some humans jogging and they're like doing the yard work, and you see them just going through the leaves and everything, and you see like that's how great it is. And then they just after they go to the zoo, like animal control, like and everybody's trying to see them, and then they start attacking in the streets of New York, and then we get to that big ass bridge battle. And it's so cool. Like, one of my favorite scenes of the movie is whenever, like, the animal control's there, they just see a horse, and then all of a sudden he goes, no! And then all of a sudden just attack. That, to me, was so cool. And, the helicopter scene's really cool, too. Whenever, like, it's in the helicopter and starts shooting all the apes, it's like, kill that one, that's the leader! And just, like, stuff like that, And also, there is one scene, there is another one scene that I have an issue with, where, like, all right, before he gets in a helicopter, after he goes to the lab and sees all the monkeys, I thought that was a cool scene. He looks up and sees all the monkeys, and they start jumping down. He runs, and then he gets in the helicopter. But he literally is speaking without a microphone or anything on. He's just literally, and it's just like, could they not get like a sound guy over them or something? Because like I don't understand what they're saying. And so I'm like, you couldn't at least get like a microphone or something with them or something. That way we can hear what they're saying. But because you don't hear what they're saying until they get in the helicopter. And I'm like, I understand that's a cool shot, but like we need to hear what they're saying. I mean, come on, like. They rehearse this dialogue. Shouldn't we be able to hear what they're saying, And I do like how at the end the bad guy he dies because Koba kills him. Like Koba just basically kicks over the helicopter because they killed the gorilla, which I thought was just such a sad death. But it was so cool at the hell. He's like, help me, and then Koba pushes it down and kills him, and just like that's so cool. And the movie does have some deleted scenes that add to the story, but I think the movie didn't really need deleted scenes. Like there's a deleted scene, an alternate ending, where James Franco dies. Like Koba shoots him dead with a shotgun, and he dies, and Caesar holds him in his hands. but they changed it because they felt like, one, they thought maybe we get a sequel, James Franco would come back, but it was before Matt Reeves took over and changed plans. But and so I really like that he didn't die. Like, he get to see him off. I thought it would have been less. It would have been less impactful, like him just seeing Caesar to go off and him just dying off screen from the virus makes more sense logically than him being shot by a shotgun. Because the apes really don't understand the concept of weapons yet. So to them killing him with a shotgun, like you see in Dawn, that the weapons, that they just now learning what those are. So I think it makes it more impactful, and I really think the acting is great, the script and story, and there's a great composition, and it even has a great post-credit scene that sets up the virus story, and you just see it spreading, and that to me, I'm like, ooh, it just makes it impactful for the sequel. You're like, the apes rose up, and so now we get to see this thing play out for real, and I think that's a really great storyline, and this is a really fantastic film. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a solid A-. Thank you so much.